All right, folks, welcome back to another sit down with Sekeres and Price. Only it's Jeff Patterson in for the vacation, Matt Sekeres. We go into a deep dive on the podcast today about American players maybe wanting out of Canadian markets and the ramifications of all that for the Canadian teams. And then the late breaking story today of Matthew Tkachuk, sort of advancing that story. Yes, Jeff, but also muddying the waters in the JT Miller saga a little bit with the Vancouver Canucks, because not only is Matthew Tkachuk, yes, another American player that is refusing to sign a long-term deal with Calgary. The best they can get out of him is the one-year extension now. But it also means this is another top-end $8 to $10.5 million player, depending on what the contract looks like, that has to compete with the Vancouver Canucks and JT Miller to find a landing spot for said player. The JT Miller trade just got more difficult, didn't it?
Well, Nazem Kadri's still out there. We're all waiting for a decision on Nazem Kadri. He's a big fish in free agency. I keep coming back to the fact that I just don't think Patrick Kane is going to finish his career as a Chicago Blackhawk, and I think he could be a rental for somebody as well. Then you get Matthew Tkachuk. There's only so many teams out there, and you're right. It kind of feels like the market's getting a little bit flooded here. So you wonder what the Canucks have up their sleeves, but I don't think that this makes life any easier for them. And then long-term ramifications. And look, we haven't heard this. There have been a few people that have tried to attach the JT Miller's an American. He wants to go back home. And yet people close to Miller have said, like, he lives on the North Shore. Like, he loves sort of the wilderness aspect of, living on the North Shore, but still being part of the hockey team in the downtown core. So I'm not sure that it's fair to paint JT Miller with that brush of he wants out. But man, Blake, when you look at the Canuck roster, you do wonder if the time is going to come at some point. Brock Besser, Thatcher Demko, Quinn Hughes and his brothers playing elsewhere, Connor Garland. This team is chock full of Americans, and we'll see if the Canucks have to cross that bridge at some point when they get to it.
Winning cures a lot of things, but it didn't cure it for Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau, right? This was a very good Calgary Flames team. Now, if they had gone on a deep run in the playoffs, does that change the equation? I think they would have had to have hoisted the cup, really, for it to change the equation, maybe gone to the cup for it really to have had a material difference on how this has all played out. Here's something that I don't think many people have considered, given that JT Miller only makes $5 million a year next year on the cap. Do they have to eat a piece of that, the Vancouver Canucks, to make this deal work? Just because then you might invite more people in. All of a sudden, that 100-point player is a lot easier to get in on the cap than the likes of a Matthew Tkachuk or Nazem Kadri.
Well, it's something that I hadn't really contemplated. Chris Gear was on the program last week, and he mentioned that, and I thought, you know what? Like, at that point, if you're the Canucks and you have to retain some, it's for the remainder of this season, and then the contract expires. So it's not going to be a prohibitive amount. I mean, it's $5.25 to start the year. By the time the trade deadline rolls around, there really wouldn't be a whole lot left owing to JT Miller. But if you can, maintain some of the salary, and that facilitates a trade, and as you said, brings a few more teams into the mix, you're essentially at that point giving the player away, and you're making it easy on the acquiring team. And if that's the road that the Canucks have to travel, it's something that I hadn't thought about prior to last week, but maybe that's an avenue that they're going to ultimately have to pursue.
So many balls in the air still for the Canucks and other National Hockey League teams. Lots more on today's podcast. We'll talk to you about it there.